All right, today we're going to be looking at solving linear inequalities, but before we do that, we need to understand what inequalities means and what interval notation is. So if we're looking at our set of notes here, we have inequality symbols. Inequalities means not equal to. So in means not, equality is obviously equal, so not equal. So if you look at these symbols, they all represent a different type of inequality. So if you look at the first one, you see x is greater than. Okay, greater because the large opening is towards x. The second one is x is less than because the small point is towards x. X is greater than or equal to, meaning it's bigger or the same as some number. And then x is less than or equal to means x is equal to a number or it's smaller than that number. And then x is not equal to just means x doesn't equal that. So on a number line, what this looks like, we have some examples here. My first example, the way it reads is x is greater than 3. Okay, so if I put 3 on this number line, I know that x is anything that is larger than 3. Anything that's larger than 3 is going to be represented by anything that goes to the right of 3, going all the way from 3 to positive infinity. Okay, so x is greater than 3 would be represented by the shading, the blue shading, and the arrow going towards positive infinity. If you look at example 2, this symbol here means less than, so x is less than 4. Meaning if I were to put 4 on a number line, anything smaller than 4 is anything that goes to the left. So we could say, this is 3, this is 1, and then after 0, you get to negative numbers, so this would be going towards negative infinity. So anything from 4 towards negative infinity, that would be represented here. Examples 3 and 4, I have x is greater than or equal to negative 2. So I'm going to write negative 2 on my number line. Remember, anything that's larger means we're going towards the right. We're going towards bigger numbers, so positive infinity. If it's greater than or equal to, we're going to first off have a solid circle, and we're going towards our larger numbers, which is towards the right. So this is how we would represent that inequality. So here we're actually including 2. So x could be equal to negative 2. Or x could be negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to infinity, but we're actually including negative 2, which is different because in example 3 where we said x was greater than 3, we're not actually including 3. So x is larger than 3, but we're not including it, so we would have an open circle here. Just like in example 2 where x is less than 4, we're not really including 4, we're just mentioning it, so we keep an open circle. In example 4, we have x is less than or equal to negative 5. So again, negative 5 on the number line. I have negative infinity on one end, positive infinity on the other. Less than means I'm going to the left, so starting at negative 5, going to the left towards the smaller numbers. And notice it's less than or equal to, so I'm going to want to fill in my circle here. So that's inequalities on a number line and what it means, what direction the numbers are going. So if we look, we have our symbols and our interval notation. Interval notation means where you start and end. So where your answers can begin and where your answers end. So start and end using parentheses, or where they start and end using brackets. Now I do want to make a note that the inequality symbols greater than or less than, so right here, they will always use parentheses, always, because we're not including the number that we start at, or we're not including the number in general. We have to mention it, but we're not including it. If we're talking about greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, we are going to use brackets because that means x can be this number. Okay? So we're going to look at some examples here, and we're going to write these out in interval notation. If I look at the directions, it says graph the inequality on a number line and give the inequality in interval notation. So my example is x is less than 7. So if I fill out my number line, I have negative infinity, 7 somewhere, and then positive infinity. I know that this symbol means less than, so I know that I'm going to go to the left. If I notice my inequality symbol, it does not have an equal to sign, so I'm going to mention 7, but I'm not including it. And this is exactly how I'm going to set up my interval notation. I look at this the same way I would read words in a sentence from left to right. So I'm looking at my starting point, which would be negative infinity up to 7. So negative infinity would be where I start, and I would end at positive 7. The symbol is just less than, so I know I'm going to use parentheses in my interval notation. So this means that x can start anywhere at negative infinity and go all the way up to, but not including, 7. In example 2, I have x is greater than or equal to negative 4, so I'm going to set up my number line, negative infinity, positive infinity, negative 4. X is greater than or equal to. So I'm going to start at negative 4, and I'm going to the greater side, which is to the right. The or equal to means I'm including 4, so I'm going to solidly fill that in. And I'm going to set up my interval notation starting at 4 and ending at positive infinity. Remember, we go from the left to the right. So negative 4, comma, positive infinity. Infinities always have a parenthesis. They never have a bracket because infinity never ends. Infinity is not a definite number. It continuously grows. So you cannot put a bracket on infinity because it never stops. In example 3, x is less than or equal to negative 1. So if I set up my number line, I'm going to go less than negative 1, which is towards the left. And I'm going to include negative 1 because we have the or equal to symbol. To set up my interval notation, I start at negative infinity, which gets a parenthesis, and I end at negative 1, which gets a bracket. So that's going to be my interval. In example 4, I have x is greater than 0. So starting at 0, anything greater than 0 is going to be to the right of it. So I'm going to fill that in. And greater than means I'm just using parentheses. And I always use a parenthesis on infinity. So my interval will be from 0 to positive infinity. And that is interval notation and inequality symbols.